Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation video. So right now I want to share a story from a book, my favorite book. The book is called The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe through this presentation. But before I start this presentation, I really want to say thank you for all of my lecturers and also especially for Miss Tutik and also for all of my friends for inspiring me. In the early of 21st century, the public is presented with so many literary works or books in the fantasy genre, and all of the books made into movie versions. These books include Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings, The Chronicles of Narnia, Bridge to Terabithia, Twilight, and many more. Some of the books I just mentioned are also the movies with one of the biggest earning of all time. And this was made fantasy was so popular and so many people loved it. In the Big Book of Modern Fantasy, it is said that classic fantasy as a story appeared from the early 20th century until the end of World War II in 1945. While modern fantasy started with the end of World War II, and soon after 1945, fantasy is confirmed as a publishing category. In 1939, fantasy began to recognize separately from both horror and science fiction genre. After the fantasy genre began to be recognized, the Lord of the Rings novels began to be published in the middle of 1960s and paved the way for other fantasy novels to be published, some of which were also best-selling books. After 2001, it was an important time in the history of pop culture fantasy because of the release of Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings movies. These two movies were also had a huge popular effect on the imaginations of fantasy, followed by a movie called The Chronicles of Narnia, which I will discuss the novel in this presentation. Among the many fantasy stories that circulated in the early 2000s, this novel became my favorite. The story was so imaginative but also easily understood by me, who was very young at that time, leaving so many pleasant memories when I'm reading or watching that story. But I will only explain about some of the elements of the story of these novels, the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, such as the characters. Now, I want to tell you about the characters of this novel, and don't forget the novel is The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The first character is the youngest of Pevensy's sibling. Her name is Lucy. Lucy is the youngest of the four siblings and the main characters of the story. She is the first one that discovers the land of Narnia. The next character is Peter. Peter is the eldest brother. He sensibly resolved disagreements between his brother and sisters, often scolding Edmund for his attitude. And the next character is Susan. Susan is the second eldest sibling actually, and she and Lucy accompany Aslan on a journey to the stone table. And the next character is Edmund. Edmund is the third youngest of four children. He has a terrible relationship with his brothers and sisters. Edmund is known to be a liar and often insults Lucy. But at the end of the story, he became a kind and wise young boy. And finally, right now is about the conclusion of this presentation. So, the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a fantasy novel for children by C.S. Lewis, published in 1950. The genre of the book is fantasy. It tells the adventures of the Pevensey sibling in a magical world called Narnia, where animals can talk and mythical creatures exist. They must help the Narnians fight the White Witch with Aslan to recover Narnia again. So that's all for my presentation. Hopefully I have delivered all the story well. And wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.